The war had lasted too long. Across the galaxy, the stars themselves seemed tired of seeing fire and smoke. Once beautiful planets now floated in silence, their surfaces covered with the scars of endless battle. The Velnari Empire, proud rulers of more than 100 worlds, had finally fallen. Their fleets, once feared across the spiral arms, were now scattered wrecks drifting among the stars, and on one of those quiet, broken worlds stood Princess Lorena Velnar, heir to the throne and the last hope of her people. She stood at the high glass balcony of the Imperial Tower, her silver eyes watching the last battle unfold far beyond the clouds. Above the burning horizon, bright flashes painted the dark sky. Each light was a ship falling, another piece of her empire breaking apart. Her reflection on the glass looked pale and tired. The once proud princess of the Velnari looked like a ghost. Her dark blue gown shimmered faintly, carrying the royal symbols of her house, but they no longer felt like badges of honor. They were reminders of failure. Behind her, the palace trembled as distant explosions shook the ground. The defense shields had fallen hours ago. The humans were coming. Her advisor, Minister Thalon, entered the room, his face pale with fear. "Your Highness," he said softly, "the humans have surrounded the city. Their flagship requests to open a communication link. The commander wishes to speak to you directly." Lorena turned slowly, her long white hair brushing against her shoulders. "A commander?" she asked quietly. "Do they send only one?" Thalon hesitated. "Not just any commander. They say it is the one who ended the war. The human who destroyed the 7th Fleet and captured the Crimson Moon base. His name is Commander Aaron Vale." The name echoed through the chamber, simple yet heavy. Lorena had heard it many times in recent months. Every Velnari soldier had. The humans spoke of him as a hero. Her people whispered his name like a curse. He was the strategist who always knew the enemy's next move. The warrior who never retreated. The one who had turned impossible battles into victories. And now he was coming for her. For a moment she said nothing. Her gaze drifted back to the burning sky. "Tell them I will meet him," she finally said. "If he is to end this war, let him do it face to face." Thalon bowed deeply and left to send the message. Lorena stayed alone in the vast chamber, the sounds of war fading outside. She pressed her hand against the cold glass and whispered to herself, "Aaron Vale. Why does that name feel familiar?" Hours later, the battle ended. The mighty palace gates opened, and from the smoke of the landing field came the human ships, sleek, black, and quiet. Soldiers in gray armor moved with perfect order, their banners shining with the symbol of the Human Alliance, a blue circle surrounded by stars. Lorena stood at the top of the marble steps, waiting. Her people had gathered behind her, guards and nobles, all silent. She held her chin high, not as a defeated ruler, but as one who still carried dignity. When the human ramp lowered, she saw him for the first time. Commander Aaron Vale stepped out, his armor scratched and marked by battle. He was tall, his face calm and sharp, with eyes that seemed older than his years. He did not walk like a conqueror. He walked like a man who had seen too much loss. 2 human officers followed behind him, but his presence was enough to silence the crowd. Even Lorena felt her heartbeat change for reasons she could not explain. He stopped before her and bowed his head slightly, a small sign of respect. "Princess Lorena Velnar," he said in a steady voice. "By order of the Human Alliance, the war is over. Your empire has surrendered. I come to ensure peace is kept." His voice was deep but gentle, not what she expected. She had imagined arrogance, triumph, but there was none. Lorena answered carefully, "Then you have achieved what you came for, Commander Vale. The Velnari Empire will obey the peace terms. We wish no more bloodshed." Aaron nodded once. His eyes met hers, and for the briefest moment something flickered. Recognition. But it vanished as quickly as it came. The silence between them felt heavy. Around them, soldiers watched, waiting for orders. Finally, Aaron spoke again. "We will discuss terms tomorrow. For now, my men will secure the palace to prevent any more fighting." "Very well," Lorena replied. "You and your officers may stay here. I will provide quarters." He gave a short nod and turned to his men. As he walked away, Lorena found herself staring after him, her mind strangely restless. That name, that face, that look in his eyes. Where had she seen it before? Later that night, the palace was quiet except for the faint hum of human patrol drones outside. Lorena sat in her private chamber, unable to rest. She looked through the old hollow records of her youth, images from a time before the war, before hatred divided the stars. One picture caught her eye. A young Velnari girl with bright silver eyes stood beside a small human boy. They were by a shining river, both smiling. She touched the image gently. The boy had short brown hair, curious eyes, and a small scar above his right eyebrow, a mark from a fall he once took while trying to climb the trees near the river. Her heart skipped. That scar. She had seen it today. She whispered the name again, her voice trembling slightly. Aaron Vale? It couldn't be, could it? The humans had come to her world once, long ago, before the war began. Her father, Emperor Velmar, had hosted a small team of human scientists. Among them were families with children. She had been lonely back then, surrounded by formality and lessons. But there had been one boy, a boy named Aaron, who always smiled, who taught her simple earth games, who promised that someday he would return. But that was decades ago. The war had erased everything. Could that boy really have become the man who now stood as the hero of the human fleet? She felt both disbelief and sadness. The next day, when the humans gathered in the council hall to begin peace talks, Lorena tried not to stare, but her eyes kept finding him. When he spoke of rebuilding, his words carried warmth, not cruelty. When he mentioned the cost of war, his tone carried regret, and then something happened that made her heart almost stop. At the end of the meeting, Aaron used a phrase in Velnari language, an old greeting that no human should know, Karalan Vesha, meaning, peace upon your spirit. Lorena froze. No human could have known that phrase except one, the same boy who had learned it from her by the river so many years ago. She looked at him sharply, her silver eyes wide with disbelief. Aaron noticed, pausing for a second, almost as if he realized what he had said. Then he nodded politely and left the hall. The room felt suddenly smaller. Her chest tightened. After everyone had gone, Lorena whispered to herself, "It is him. It must be him." Outside, the human banners fluttered in the morning wind. The war was over, but for Lorena, something even more powerful had begun. The awakening of an old memory buried beneath years of fire and fear. The human who had conquered her world was the same boy who once promised never to hurt her people, and now he had returned, not as a friend, but as the warrior who ended her empire. The morning sun touched the towers of the Velnari palace with pale gold light, filtering through the massive glass walls. The war was over, yet the halls felt strange and empty, as though the entire empire held its breath. Princess Lorena walked down the grand corridors, her mind restless. Every echo of her steps reminded her of the soldier she had seen yesterday, the human commander Aaron Vale. He had walked into her life like a shadow of the past. She could not stop thinking about him. That scar above his eyebrow. The way he carried himself, even the faint curve of his smile. Everything felt familiar. But how could it be the same boy she remembered from years ago? Her advisor, Minister Thalon, walked beside her. "Your Highness," he said cautiously, "the commander will meet you today again. He requested a private discussion before the council session begins." Lorena nodded slowly. "Very well," she replied. "Prepare the chamber. I want no interruptions." As Thalon left, she took a deep breath. The memories of her childhood came rushing back. A small human boy laughing by the river, chasing floating stones, promising that he would find her again no matter what happened. That boy had seemed so fragile then, yet here stood the man who had ended a war and conquered her people's fear. When she entered the chamber, she found Aaron waiting. He stood tall, calm, and quiet, as if he had known she would arrive. His eyes met hers immediately. In that instant, something flickered between them, a recognition too deep to ignore. "Princess Lorena," he said, his voice steady but softer than it had been yesterday. "I am glad we have a moment alone." "Commander Vale," she said, sitting across from him. Her voice was controlled, yet a tremor of something she could not name slipped through. Aaron studied her for a moment before speaking. "You look different than I remember," he said quietly. But your eyes, they are the same. Lorena stiffened. Her silver eyes met his brown ones, searching for the truth. Do I know you? She asked carefully, though her heart had already begun to answer. Aaron hesitated, then leaned slightly forward. I hope you do, he said. Do you remember? A boy on your planet many years ago. He learned your games, your language, even your small river customs? Her heart raced. A wave of emotion, disbelief, joy, and fear washed over her. She struggled to keep her voice steady. Aaron, she whispered, the name almost catching in her throat. He smiled faintly, a shadow of the boy he once was. Yes, it is me. The chamber fell silent. Time seemed to stretch, memories and reality colliding. Lorena remembered the long summer afternoons by the river, the boy who had taught her earth games, and the promises he had made. She remembered his laughter, the way he had held her hand when she had slipped into the water, the small adventures that felt like magic in their innocent world. And now, he was here. The same boy grown into a man who had ended the war, standing before her. Aaron reached for a small hollow device and projected an image from decades ago, a photograph she had thought lost forever. The young human boy, with messy brown hair and a small Velnari girl with bright silver eyes, smiling by the crystal river. You kept this? Lorena asked, her voice barely audible. I did, Aaron said softly. I never forgot. I promised I would find you again. She swallowed hard, emotions rushing like a river ready to break its banks. I thought you were gone, that the war would make everything impossible. He shook his head. The war changed many things, but some memories, they survive even the galaxy. For a long moment, neither spoke. The weight of the past and the reality of the present hung between them. Outside the palace, the human fleet shimmered in the sunlight, a reminder of the war's end. Inside, the chamber felt like a sanctuary, a place where the world outside no longer mattered. Finally, Lorena stood. You came as a commander, a warrior, a hero to the humans, and yet I see the boy I once knew. Her voice trembled, but she smiled. How did you become this man? Aaron looked down for a moment. The galaxy changes us, he said. I trained, I fought, I led armies. But I never forgot who I was, who I promised to protect. His eyes met hers, and for the first time vulnerability shone through the soldier's mask. Lorena felt something inside her soften. The anger and fear she had carried as a princess faded slightly, replaced by the warmth of an old friendship, buried under years of war. I did not expect this, she admitted. I thought meeting the man who ended my empire would be frightening. And yet, Aaron said, a small smile appearing, here we are, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as two people who remember what matters. The sound of footsteps interrupted them. Thalon entered, bowing respectfully. Your Highness, the council is ready, he said. Lorena nodded, taking a deep breath. Very well, but Commander Vale, stay after the council. There is much I wish to discuss. Aaron inclined his head. I will be here. The council chamber was vast, with towering walls of crystal and holographic projections of the galaxy. Human and Velnari leaders sat together, tension and hope coexisting in the same room. Discussions began about rebuilding cities, sharing resources, and preventing further conflicts, but Lorena found her attention constantly drifting to Aaron. Every time he spoke, his words were measured and thoughtful, not the cold authority she had expected from a war hero. He spoke of the cost of lives, of families lost, and of the need to heal, not dominate. After hours of discussion, when the council adjourned, Lorena led Aaron to a quiet balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The gardens were a remnant of the old empire, trees carefully tended despite the scars of war. Soft lights illuminated the paths, casting long shadows. I have so many questions, Lorena said, breaking the silence. And I have answers, Aaron replied. She laughed softly, a sound that had not come easily in years. You learned our language, the old greetings. You know things only someone who spent time here could know. I did, Aaron admitted. I wanted to understand you even then. I wanted to remember everything just in case. His voice trailed off. Just in case what? Lorena asked, curiosity mixing with emotion. Just in case we would meet again, he said quietly. The princess stared at him, feeling a strange mixture of relief and fear. He had ended her empire, but he had not destroyed her spirit. He had returned not as a conqueror, but as the boy she had trusted long ago, the one who promised he would always care. For the first time since the war began, Lorena allowed herself to hope. Perhaps peace was not only possible between their peoples, but also between them. Can we try to understand each other? She asked. Aaron nodded. I want to, whatever the past, whatever the war. We can start again. And so, under the quiet light of the palace gardens, two friends separated by war but united by memory began to reconnect. The galaxy outside was still vast and dangerous, but here, in this moment, the weight of history felt a little lighter. The human who had conquered her world was no longer just a warrior. He was Aaron, the boy by the river, the friend who remembered her laughter, and perhaps the bridge to a future she could not yet imagine. The next morning came quietly. The palace stood in silence, surrounded by the human fleet above the clouds. From her window, Princess Lorena Velnar could see the bright silver trails of their patrol ships. They were beautiful in a strange way, sleek, calm, and disciplined, so different from the fiery war machines her people once built. Peace had returned to her world, but it did not feel peaceful yet. The air carried the heavy memory of war. Inside the grand meeting hall, the humans and Velnari gathered again to discuss the rebuilding plan. The atmosphere was tense. Lorena sat at the head of the table, her posture firm but her heart uneasy. Across from her sat Commander Aaron Vale, the man who had ended the war, and the boy she had once called a friend. She still could not believe it. Even after all this time, she could see traces of that same curious boy, who used to laugh by the river, who once tried to teach her a human song. His face had grown older, sharper, and marked by command. But when he smiled, it was the same quiet smile she remembered. As the meeting began, Aaron spoke in his calm, steady voice. Our first goal is stability, he said. We will provide medical help to your cities and restore communication systems. Your people should not see us as conquerors, but as partners. His words were thoughtful, but Lorena could see some of her advisors frowning. Minister Thalan leaned closer to her and whispered, Princess, they speak of peace, but they occupy our skies. Do not forget, they are still the victors. She nodded but said nothing. Her gaze returned to Aaron. When the meeting ended, most of the council members left, still whispering among themselves. Lorena stayed behind, pretending to look over reports. She could sense Aaron standing nearby, hesitating to leave. Finally, he spoke softly. You don't agree with your advisors, do you? She looked up, surprised. And how would you know that, Commander? He smiled faintly. Because you were listening, not arguing. You think before you speak. You were like that even when you were a child, Lorena froze. Her heart skipped. That tone, it was not a soldier speaking, but someone who remembered. Her voice trembled slightly. You still remember? Aaron stepped closer, his expression calm but his eyes filled with quiet warmth. How could I forget? The girl who used to steal fruit from the gardens and blame me for it? A small, surprised laugh escaped her lips. You still remember that? I remember everything, he said. The rivers, the songs, the glowing trees at night. Your world was beautiful. It still is. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The war, the politics, the fear, all faded away. There were only two old friends who had found each other again in the ruins of time. But then reality returned. Lorena turned away, her expression serious again. You destroyed many of those rivers, Commander. Your ships burned them. Aaron lowered his gaze. Yes, he said quietly. And I will carry that weight for the rest of my life. I did what I had to do to end the war, not to destroy your home. I thought, maybe if we ended it quickly, fewer children would suffer. Lorena said nothing. She wanted to be angry, but she could hear honesty in his voice. The human commander who had been called ruthless across the galaxy was speaking like a man who hated the war as much as she did. After a long silence, she asked softly, "Why didn't you say who you were before, when you first arrived?" Aaron looked at her with a faint smile. "Would you have believed me? That the man who led the attack on your fleet was once your friend?" She sighed. "Perhaps not." Their eyes met again. There was no hatred, only sorrow mixed with something gentle, something that had survived from their childhood. In the following days, Aaron and Lyrina met often to discuss the rebuilding work. Each time their talks grew less formal. They spoke about the past, about the strange years when humans and Velnari once lived in peace. Lyrina told him stories of how her people used to travel across galaxies without war. Aaron shared how Earth had united after centuries of division to stand together in the stars. They walked through the palace gardens one evening, where the air smelled of flowers that had survived the war. The golden lights of the city flickered in the distance. "Do you ever think," Aaron asked, "that maybe we were both fighting the same fear?" Lyrina looked at him puzzled. "What do you mean?" "Fear of losing what we love," he said. "Humans fought because they feared the Velnari would destroy them. The Velnari fought because they feared humans would rise too fast. Maybe we both forgot how much we once shared." Lyrina thought about it for a long moment. "Perhaps you're right. Fear changes everything." They stopped near the fountain. The water sparkled under the pale moonlight. For a second, it felt like the old days by the river. She could almost hear their younger selves laughing somewhere far away. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked softly. "Every day," Aaron said. "I used to believe peace was just a dream. But seeing you here, I remember why I wanted it in the first place." Her heart ached. She had never expected the human warrior to speak like that. It made her realize something. Beneath the armor and medals, Aaron was still that same boy who once dreamed of a peaceful galaxy. But not everyone shared their quiet hope. Whispers of anger were growing within the palace. Some Velnari officers believed the humans were tricking them, pretending friendship to control their empire. They accused Lyrina of being too soft. They said she trusted the enemy too much. One night, as Lyrina reviewed new reports in her chamber, Minister Thalon entered looking worried. "Your Highness," he said carefully, "the council grows restless. They think you are spending too much time with the human commander. They fear he is influencing you." Lyrina set the tablet aside. "And what do you believe, Thalon?" He hesitated. "I believe you are a wise leader, Princess. But I also know how easily people can lose faith. Be careful. Not everyone wants peace." She nodded slowly. "Thank you for the warning." After he left, she looked out the window at the human ships in orbit. Their lights twinkled among the stars. For the first time in years, she did not feel anger looking at them. She felt hope and fear of losing it. The next day, Aaron invited her to the city outskirts to see the rebuilding camps. Together, they walked through rows of tents where human and Velnari engineers worked side by side. Machines hummed, rebuilding homes and power systems. Children ran past them, laughing, a sound Lyrina had not heard in years. It made her smile. Aaron watched her and said quietly, "That's why I fight. Not for glory, not for medals, just for moments like this." She turned to him. "You are not what I expected from a human warrior." He smiled. "And you're not what I expected from a Velnari princess." Their laughter filled the warm air. For a short while, they forgot titles and history. They were simply Aaron and Lyrina again. But as the sun began to set, a messenger ran up to them. His face was pale. "Commander Vale, Princess. There has been an attack near the southern ruins. Unknown Velnari rebels opened fire on human patrols." Lyrina's smile faded instantly. "Rebels? But I ordered all forces to stand down." Aaron's calm voice returned. "We'll handle it. But this could be bad. Some don't want peace, Princess. They want revenge." Lyrina's heart sank. She could see it now. The fragile peace they had built together might soon break apart. As they rushed back to the palace, the stars above grew darker. The bond between them had grown strong, but shadows of betrayal were starting to rise, and both of them knew. Before the dawn of true peace, they would have to face the last ghost of the war. The night sky above the Velnari capital was calm, but deep within the city, danger moved quietly in the shadows. Princess Lyrina Velnar stood at the palace balcony watching the stars. The lights of human ships floated far above, guarding the world like silent watchers. Peace had lasted for only a few days, yet she could already feel the tension building again. The rebels had struck twice in the past week. Small attacks. Nothing serious, but they carried a message. Some of her own people no longer followed her orders. Behind her, the door opened. Commander Aaron Vale entered wearing his dark uniform. His expression was serious, though his tone stayed calm. "We captured one of the attackers near the southern district," he said. "They were armed with old Velnari weapons." Lorena turned to face him. "Do you know who sent them?" Aaron nodded slowly. "Not yet, but I think it's someone inside your palace." Her eyes widened slightly. "You believe my counsel?" "I believe someone is using your name," he said. "They want to make me look like the enemy again. If they succeed, this fragile peace will die." She looked down, her voice quiet. "I knew it would not be easy. Some still hate the humans. They cannot forget the war." Aaron stepped closer, his voice softer. "Peace is never easy, but you are the reason it's even possible." For a moment, Lorena met his eyes. They stood close, the silence between them filled with memories of the past. Two children who once dreamed of a better galaxy. Then, a sudden sound broke the calm. A distant explosion shook the palace walls. Aaron turned sharply. "That came from the East Wing." Lorena's guards rushed into the room. "Princess, the rebels are inside the palace." Before she could answer, more blasts echoed through the corridors. Smoke filled the air. The lights flickered. Aaron grabbed her arm gently but firmly. "We have to move, now!" They ran through the long hallways, guided by human soldiers and loyal Velnari guards. The palace that once felt so safe now shook like a battlefield once more. In the distance, Lorena could hear the sound of plasma fire, the sharp, humming noise of human weapons. They reached a junction where the path split. Aaron ordered his soldiers to cover both sides. "Keep the princess safe," he commanded. Lorena frowned. "I will not hide, Commander. These are my people. If they are attacking, I must face them." "Not now," he said. "They will not listen to reason." Before they could argue, another blast tore through the wall. A group of armed rebels appeared, shouting and firing. Aaron moved fast, too fast for her to even react. His plasma pistol glowed blue as he took cover and fired back with precision. Every shot was controlled. Every move was exact. Lorena ducked behind a fallen pillar, her heart racing. She saw Aaron take a hit on his shoulder armor but keep fighting. Without thinking, she drew her energy blade, a curved weapon glowing with violet light. She had trained since childhood, and though she rarely used it, she would not let others die for her. She stepped out and blocked a bolt aimed at Aaron. The blade hummed as it deflected the shot. Aaron glanced at her in surprise. "You can fight?" Lorena smirked faintly. "You forget, Commander. I was not always a princess who stayed in palaces." Together they fought side by side. The sight was something neither human nor Velnari had ever imagined. A human commander and an alien princess defending each other in battle. The rebels began to fall back. But just as they thought it was over, a heavy explosion blew open the corridor ahead. More rebels poured in, carrying heavier weapons. Aaron shouted, "Down!" and pulled Lorena behind cover as the blast wave struck. The ceiling shook, dust filling the air. He winced, holding his bleeding arm, but his eyes stayed sharp. "We have to get to the command room. From there we can seal the palace doors." Lorena nodded. "Follow me. There's a shortcut through the royal archives." They ran through the smoke-filled corridors. The walls were cracked, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. Behind them, human soldiers fought to hold the line. In the archives, rows of glowing data crystals lit their path. It was strangely peaceful for a moment. Aaron slowed, breathing hard. His shoulder wound was worse than he admitted. Lorena stopped and looked at him with concern. "You're hurt," he shook his head. "It's nothing." She stepped closer, ignoring his protest. Carefully, she tore a strip from her gown and wrapped it around his arm. "You humans are always pretending to be stronger than you are," she said softly. Aaron gave a small smile. "And you Velnari are always too proud to ask for help." They shared a brief laugh, small but enough to ease the fear around them. Then Lorena heard footsteps approaching. She turned, ready to fight, but it was Minister Thalen, her advisor, surrounded by several guards. "Princess," he said urgently, "you must come with us. The rebels are in the main hall." Aaron raised his weapon slightly. Something felt wrong. The guards with Thalen wore Velnari armor, but their insignias were missing. "Thalen," Aaron said calmly, "how did you get through the south gates?" "They were sealed minutes ago." Thylon hesitated, then his eyes hardened. "Because we opened them." Lorena froze. "You—" He raised his hand. "Forgive me, Princess, but peace with humans is a lie. You would surrender our empire to them. I cannot allow that." The guards aimed their rifles. Aaron moved in front of Lorena, his pistol ready. "You're making a mistake." Thalon's voice trembled with anger. "No, human. The mistake was trusting your kind. You destroyed our worlds. You killed millions." Aaron replied calmly, "And more millions will die if this war begins again." But Thalon only shouted, "Fire!" Blaster shots filled the room. Aaron and Lorena ducked behind a row of archive pillars. Sparks flew everywhere. Aaron fired back with precision, his wounded arm shaking but steady. Lorena used her blade to deflect shots aimed at him. One by one, Thalon's guards fell. The last one tried to rush forward, but Lorena spun and struck his weapon aside with graceful precision. Thalon stumbled backward, fear in his eyes. "You're protecting him? A human?" Lorena's voice was firm. "I'm protecting peace. I'm protecting my people. And that includes everyone who wants to live, not just those who want to fight." Thalon shouted something in rage and ran, disappearing down a corridor. Aaron tried to follow, but Lorena stopped him. "No, let him go. The others will catch him." The sound of fighting outside slowly faded. The palace was secure again. Aaron leaned against a wall, breathing heavily. Lorena helped him stand straight. "You saved me," he said quietly. "You saved me first," she answered with a faint smile. They stood there for a moment, surrounded by the silent glow of the archives. Both covered in dust, both carrying wounds, but both alive. Outside, the dawn was breaking. The first light of morning touched the glass walls of the palace, turning the sky golden. Aaron looked at it and said softly, "Maybe peace is born in moments like this, when people who should be enemies fight side by side." Lorena looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the sunrise. "Then let us make sure it never dies again." She reached out her hand and Aaron took it. In that quiet moment, the war that had once divided their worlds seemed very far away. But even as the sun rose, they both knew one truth: the hardest battle was yet to come. The first light of morning spilled across the Velnari capital, turning the glass towers golden and casting long shadows across the palace grounds. The air was quiet, almost peaceful, though the memory of last night's attack lingered in every corridor. Princess Lorena Velnar stood at the highest balcony of the Imperial Tower, her silver eyes scanning the horizon. Ships from the Human Alliance floated above the city, patrolling silently. They were no longer soldiers of war, but guardians of peace. Behind her, Commander Aaron Vale approached, his steps soft against the marble floor. His shoulder wound was bandaged and his face carried the faint trace of exhaustion, yet his posture remained steady. "You're awake early," Lorena said softly. Aaron smiled faintly. "Sleep doesn't come easy when you know enemies can still hide in the shadows." She looked at him, understanding. "And yet you stayed." "Even after the fighting last night," he shrugged. "I promised to protect you, not just as a human commander, but as someone who remembers a promise made long ago." Lorena's heart stirred. That boy she had once known, the one who had laughed by the rivers and dreamed of a peaceful galaxy, was still here. And now he had returned not as a child, but as a warrior who had changed the fate of the stars. The palace was alive with activity. Human and Velnari engineers worked together, repairing walls, rebuilding communication arrays, and clearing debris. Children, their laughter like music after years of silence, ran through the streets. Families shared meals and stories, exchanging smiles where once there had been fear. Lorena moved through the city, accompanied by Aaron. They walked side by side, observing the rebuilding work, speaking quietly to each other. "Your people are strong," Aaron said. "Even after all they have lost, they do not give up." "They always find a way," Lorena replied. "Even in the darkest times, hope survives." They reached a newly built plaza where Velnari citizens and human soldiers mingled. A small child ran up to Lorena, holding a flower. She knelt and took it, smiling warmly. Aaron watched her, his eyes reflecting admiration and something deeper, something unspoken. "You inspire them," he said. "Not just your people, but mine as well." Lorena looked at him, a quiet blush coloring her cheeks. "And you?" You inspire me. He gave her a small smile and stepped closer. For a moment, words were unnecessary. The bond they shared, the friendship from their childhood and the trust forged in battle, was enough. Later that day, a grand ceremony was held in the palace courtyard. Leaders from human and Velnari factions gathered to sign the Treaty of Two Suns, a historic agreement uniting both civilizations in peace and cooperation. The plaza was filled with citizens and soldiers alike. Flags of both worlds fluttered in the gentle breeze. Cameras recorded the event for the galaxy to witness. Princess Lorena, dressed in ceremonial robes, stepped forward. She raised her hand, calling for silence. Her voice was clear, confident, and full of hope. People of the Velnari Empire, she began, and allies of the Human Alliance. Today we stand at the dawn of a new era. The war that divided our worlds has ended. We are no longer enemies, but partners. Together, we will rebuild what was lost and create a future where children will never know the fear we have endured. The crowd erupted in applause. Cheers echoing across the plaza. She turned slightly to Aaron, who stood beside her, his uniform gleaming in the sun. The warrior who ended our war was once my friend, she said, her voice softening. And now he is the reason we can begin again. Aaron gave a small bow, a gesture both formal and intimate. The crowd's attention returned to the ceremony, but for a brief moment, the two shared a look that carried decades of memory, sorrow, and hope. After the treaty was signed, Lorena and Aaron found themselves alone in the palace gardens. The air was fragrant with flowers that had survived the years of war, and the sunlight shimmered on the fountains. This place, it feels like the rivers where we played as children, Lorena said softly. Aaron nodded. I thought I would never see this again. He paused, studying her face. Lorena, I never forgot you. Not once. Her eyes widened slightly. And I never forgot you, Aaron. Even after all that time, even after the war. I always hoped you would return. He stepped closer. I promised I would. And I kept that promise even when the galaxy tried to tear us apart. Lorena smiled, tears forming in her eyes. She reached out her hand. Then let us make a new promise. Together we will protect our people. Together we will ensure peace lasts. Aaron took her hand gently, his fingers intertwining with hers. Together, he agreed. For a moment they simply stood there, hand in hand, watching the sun rise over the city. The past, with all its sorrow and loss, felt distant. The future, filled with hope and possibilities, stretched before them like the endless stars. Weeks passed and the work of rebuilding continued. Human engineers helped repair energy grids while Velnari artisans restored ancient monuments. Trade routes reopened, and cultural exchanges began for the first time in centuries. Aaron remained close to Lorena, not as a soldier commanding obedience, but as a friend, a partner, and a bridge between worlds. They shared laughter and stories, sometimes walking silently, feeling the comfort of each other's presence. One afternoon, they stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The air was filled with the sounds of life, children laughing, merchants calling out, and the soft hum of machinery. You did this, Lorena said, turning to him. Not just the peace, but the hope. You showed our people that humans can be trusted. Aaron shook his head. You did it, Lorena. You gave them reason to believe. I just stood by your side. She smiled and nudged him playfully. Even the strongest warriors need someone to remind them why they fight. He chuckled, a rare sound that made her heart flutter. And you reminded me why peace is worth more than victory. Months later, the galaxy took notice. The story of the princess and the human commander spread far and wide, a tale of friendship surviving across time, a reminder that even in the darkest hours humanity could shine. Velnari and human children studied together in new schools. Families from both worlds shared meals, and festivals celebrated the unity of civilizations that had once been enemies. Lorena and Aaron remained close, not just as leaders, but as companions who had shared battles, memories, and trust. Their bond became a symbol, a promise that friendship and hope could overcome the scars of war. One evening, they returned to the river where they had first met as children. The water still sparkled under the starlight, unchanged by decades of war. Lorena knelt by the riverbank, dipping her hand into the cool water. It's still here, she whispered. Aaron knelt beside her, his hand brushing hers. Some things never change, he said softly. Not the river, not the stars, and not the promises we make to those we care about. She looked at him, her silver eyes shining. I thought I lost you forever. You didn't, he replied gently, and I will never leave you again. The river flowed quietly around them, reflecting the stars above. Two hands, once separated by war and distance, now held tightly. Two hearts, bound by memories of childhood and trials of adulthood, beat as one. Above them, the stars seemed to shine brighter than ever. The galaxy, scarred by centuries of conflict, finally had a moment of true peace. And for Princess Larina and Commander Aaron Vale, the future stretched out like the endless sky, a future of hope, friendship, and a bond that no war could ever break.